12 years ago, a man went missing, and then video emerged that is baffling authorities to this day. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the footage that nobody can explain.
So today we're going to be covering the disappearance of Lars Mittank. So this particular case is not new. It's been covered a ton on YouTube, on Reddit. I mean, it's everywhere. But the reason it's so popular, or I should say it's drawing so much interest, is because there's this fascinating video that goes with the case. Basically, Lars, who disappears, we see his final moments on a closed circuit TV camera at an airport, and there's multiple camera angles. It's right in front of you. It's not hard to see what he's doing. There's multiple witnesses. There's so much information around kind of what led up to this, from doctors, from his friends, and then there's this video. Like, there's just so much information, and no one knows what happened or where he is. So let's dive in. On June 30th, 2014, Lars Mittank and 4 of his friends, these guys are all in their 20s, they left northern Germany, where they were all from. They lived, they worked there, and made their way to Bulgaria. They were staying at a very popular seaside resort called the Golden Sands, and they were just going to have a nice vacation, a nice week-long vacation.
Looks beautiful.
They get there, they check into their hotel, and promptly begin to relax. And everything is going great. They're, going to the clubs, they're going to the beach, they're eating good food. I mean, it's going the way they had hoped it would go, until the end of the trip. So on one of the last days of their trip, July 6th, Lars is at a local bar, and they're watching a soccer game. And something happens where Lars basically voices his interest in one team, and the locals that were in the bar, they were supporting the other team. And so they start, arguing, but it escalates really quickly. It turned into a full-blown thing. His friends come in, they pull him out. There was no physical violence in the bar. It was just an altercation that could have gone to blows, but it didn't. Later that night, Lars and his friends, they're getting ready to shut it down for the night, and they go to a McDonald's. And so Lars doesn't want to go in, so he stays outside, and his 4 friends go in to get some food. When they come out, Lars is gone. And so they're sitting around waiting for him, and he's nowhere to be found. And they say, okay, well, maybe, he went back to the hotel. Perhaps he just wanted to crash early. So they go back to the hotel, and he's not there. And so they kind of are faced with this decision of like, well, what do we do? And they're like, well, he's an adult. I'm sure he's fine, and I bet he'll turn up soon. So they just kind of write it off and say, Lars will come back. And so they go to bed. When they get up, Lars had returned, and he had this kind of bizarre story about why he was missing. He said that this group of men who he thought were either Russian or locals, so Bulgarians, had attacked him, and he was convinced that they had been sent after him by the people he had been fighting with in the bar over that soccer game, that they had kind of ordered a hit on Lars. And that was his whole story. And so, his friends are looking at him and they're like, why did you leave? I mean, if you had been fighting with them, would it have occurred right outside the McDonald's, and we would have come out and found you? You had to have gone somewhere for this to happen.
Well, I'm noticing a couple red flags right off the rip here. And the first one is, if you're already making bad decisions of a night out drinking, there's no way in hell you're going to turn down some late night Mickey D's. The second one is, once Lars went missing, his friends should have put in a better effort to try and find him. You should have put together a search party or something, especially after a late night of drinking. And the third major red flag is when Lars came back to the hotel, it was hours later. They wouldn't have kidnapped this dude, attacked him for hours at end. They would have just jumped him, robbed him, but they let him go, and he shows up hours later. So I don't understand that. Where was he for all this time?
The time didn't make any sense. But ultimately, they kind of decided that, Lars just had a weird night. He's back now. He is safe. So let's just write it off. He was attacked, but we're leaving here today anyways. Lars said that he got hit in the ear during the scuffle with these 4 assailants. And so just to be safe, they said, Lars, you should go to the doctor. You should just get it looked at before we fly home. So Lars goes to a doctor who examines him, and he looks in his ear, and it turns out Lars has a perforated eardrum. And, at first, the doctor actually suggested surgery, which Lars refused. He didn't want to do surgery in Bulgaria. If he was going to do surgery, he would have done it back home in Germany. And he instead goes for the antibiotic that this doctor prescribes him, which is called Cefuroxime. So here's an image.
Never heard of it.
See it for yourself. So he gets this antibiotic, and the doctor tells him that, flying, because he was scheduled to fly home with his friends back to Germany that night, flying could be problematic for someone with a perforated eardrum, because the change in air pressure as you're flying could potentially make the damage to your ear worse. And so the doctor suggested that you don't fly home with your friends tonight. Instead, you delay your trip home a couple of days, and you just kind of let your ear, I guess, recover a little bit before you fly home. So Lars goes back and he tells his friends what's going on with his ear and what the doctor said. And their first thought is, well, we'll stay with you. We'll stay here with you. We'll all delay our flights, and we'll fly home together in a couple of days. But Lars was adamant. Maybe he was just trying to be a good friend and not make them worry. He just said, look, I'm going to be totally fine. You guys take your scheduled flight tonight. Go home. I'm fine. I'll get a cheap hotel. I'll stay here for a couple of days, and then I'll make my way home. It's not a big deal. So Lars and his 4 friends, they take off for the airport. His friends go into the airport and fly home to Germany. And Lars goes to look for a hotel near the airport.
I don't know what's up with Lars's buddies here, but they don't seem like good friends. The doctor said his ear is going to heal in a couple days and he can't fly. One of those guys should have just stayed with him, especially with the events that happened last night with him claiming the mafia was after him. And now the doctor's saying that he's got a really fucked up ear and he might possibly need surgery. You probably need just like one guy to stay with you. I'd want one friend to stay with me, especially if I was viciously attacked the night before, which I still don't know if I believe.
Because he's only going to be delaying his trip a couple of days, and he'd rather just be close to the airport. So he finds this cheap hotel called the Hotel Color. And so this is really where Lars's behavior starts becoming totally bizarre. So around midnight, Lars calls his mother, and he tells her that she needs to turn off all of his bank cards. Like, shut off my credit card, shut off my debit card, turn them all off. And she's confused, right? Like, she's trying to make sense of what he's saying, but there wasn't really a good reason for why he was saying this. And then he hangs up. And so
what was the reason?
What's going on? Then at 3 a.m., so a few hours later, he calls her back. And now he's whispering. And he's clearly terrified. In fact, Sandra Mittank, his mother, would later in an interview after this whole case really blew up, would say to a German TV station that through the phone, she could tell that her son was terrified. This was not an act. This was like, he is terrified. He's fearing for his life. But he calls her at 3 and he's like, there is a group of men trying to attack me. They're gonna kill me. And he was 100% convinced of it. She, Sandra, would later say that she wished that she had asked more questions of her son, but this behavior was so uncharacteristic of him that I think his mother just kind of was like, okay, we're gonna get through the night. I'll talk to my son tomorrow. He's coming home tomorrow anyways.
I have a couple theories, but my main theory right now is Lars just got involved with drugs. You know, he went over to Bulgaria with his buddies and he was just doing drugs and he wanted to continue to do drugs. He convinced his friends to leave so he could just stay there maybe for an extra day or two to do these drugs. The substances are making him paranoid and he's just doing some crazy things. I don't think the mafia is after this guy. I think that was just all in his head the entire time. He may have gotten in some kind of scuffle, and maybe that's what caused his ear perforation. I don't feel like somebody's hunting this guy down. I think he's just being paranoid, and that's why he's calling his mom.
So finally, after that phone call at 3, he texts his mother a little bit after that, asking her about the antibiotic he's been prescribed. And he's asking her what it is. He's listing the name, which again is Cefuroxime 500, and he's asking her about it like he has no idea what it is. And she's like, that's a very commonly prescribed antibiotic that
okay.
Lots of people prescribe. They gave it to you. Investigators would later speak to staff at the hotel and they would review the hotel's footage, their CCTV footage. And between the first phone call to his mother at midnight and the phone call at 3 a.m., Lars had actually been pacing the halls at around 1 a.m. He'd been pacing up and down the halls and he was ducking into an elevator and hiding. And then at some point he had left for about an hour and then came back and no one knows where he went. At 6 a.m., Lars was dropped off at the airport via a taxi, and investigators would speak to the person who rode that taxi with Lars. And they would say that he seemed a bit off. They said that his pupils were very dilated. He gets to the airport.
I mean, if Lars was really fearing for his life, why would he leave the safety and comfort of his hotel at such an early hour? Like, that just seems backwards to me. And like, what is he doing out there for an hour at that time anyway? Like, what can you be doing after 3 a.m. in the streets anyway? And then now the taxi driver saying that his pupils were very dilated and he wasn't making too much sense. This is seeming more and more like he just kind of got hooked on some kind of crazy Bulgarian drug.
He gets to the airport and he texts his mother that he's arrived at the terminal. At this point, his mother confirmed that his flight had been booked, and she suggested to him that he should go talk to the airport doctor and just get his ear looked at one more time before he flies home. And I think on some level, she just wanted a health professional to see her son, just because the behavior he had shown over the past, 12 hours was just totally out of character.
I think so too.
The CCTV cameras capture Lars walking into the airport, seeing this doctor, and then I'll get into what actually happens. So on camera, and you're going to see it in a minute, Lars goes into the airport. So his mother's told him that he needs to go see a doctor, and he does that. He walks over to where the doctor is, and he goes inside. Everything seems totally normal. That doctor would say that he was pleasant, but as he was being examined, the doctor looked in his ear and said, "Yep, everything looks okay. You can fly home." Okay. But the doctor would say that it was clear that Lars, he was paranoid about something. The doctor didn't know what it was. He has no context. But he could tell that something was going on. He was fidgety, he was a little bit nervous. And then when a construction worker came into to the doctor's office, he had on a construction, bright, reflective vest. They were doing some renovations inside of the airport, so this is fairly normal. And apparently this construction worker, was actually working on the doctor's office, and he stepped in to maybe ask a quick question. Lars sees this construction worker, and this is actually, I think this is off camera. You see that he's in the office, but you don't see this interaction. And something happens where, this guy triggers a full-fledged flight response, where Lars drops everything he has, leaves his luggage, and starts yelling, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die," and sprints out of the airport. This is all on camera. You're going to see it in a second.
What?
And he leaves the airport. He's just kind of looking around. He doesn't really know what he's doing, and he kind of like jogs his way across the parking lot, and he gets to a big barbed wire fence, instantly scales it. The barbed wires don't seem to affect him, and he disappears into the woods, never to be seen again.
What? Everything looks fine. Yeah, he's hauling ass right now. He's slowing down a little bit. Maybe it's just the framing on the camera. Yeah, no, he's definitely picking up speed. There's nobody around this guy, too. Like, there's nobody chasing him. Like, if you're in a wide open spot like that. He just jumped a fence.
So since his disappearance, there's only been, one unvalidated sighting of him. It was a year later by a trucker who really didn't have much information about him. He just said that he picked up a guy that was like barefoot walking on the road, who later on, this truck driver would look at the news or something and would say, "Oh, that looks like Lars Mittank." But that's unconfirmed. Other than that, we have no idea what happened to him. A couple theories about what might have happened. The first one is that perhaps there was a side effect of this antibiotic that he was given by this doctor in Bulgaria. But there's a couple huge issues with this. The first one being Lars never filled his prescription. The doctor, when he went to the airport, was able to see his records, and he had not filled it. So he didn't have the antibiotic. But even if he had, this is one of the most commonly prescribed antibiotics that, the percentage of people that have any sort of side effect it's like less than 1%.
All right, so he didn't even take it.
But he never filled his prescription, so that seems like that's kind of out the window. The other is, especially if you look at the mydriasis that he was experiencing in the taxi cab with the highly dilated pupils, the hit to the head, he's this ruptured eardrum, that perhaps he suffered like a traumatic brain injury, like a concussion, that was leading to somewhat erratic behavior. And I'm by no means claim to be a medical professional, but typically if you see side effects of a head injury, it doesn't present itself immediately and like super aggressively. It's usually over the course of time, your behavior changes, or at least a couple days later they present. It's very rare that you would be struck on the head and be a totally different person.
We just don't understand the brain completely yet. As far as you think science and technology has come and everything, there's still so much about the human body that we just don't know. It's not completely out of the realm of possibilities that he got hit in the head and knocked something loose in a way that has never been documented before, that just made him incredibly paranoid about things. I mean, it's just kind of sad if that's the case.
Another theory is that even though Lars did not have a history of mental health issues, and neither did anybody else in his family, that the fight he got into where he was attacked could have triggered some sort of psychotic break that was so stressful that he lost his mind. That is certainly possible too. So weeks turned into months, turned into years, and despite the unvalidated sighting, I mean, no one has any idea where Lars is. He was an outdoor enthusiast. He was definitely competent in the outdoors, not like a survivalist or something, but he definitely was not out of his element out in the wilderness. And so some thought perhaps he just wanted to start a new life, and he ran off into the woods and was living it out there. But the family, the Mittank family, they hired a private investigator. I mean, they pulled out all the stops to scour the area and look for him, but there's no signs that anybody is like living in the immediate proximity to the airport in the wilderness there, and there's no body, there's no anything.
But if we are to believe the truck driver that supposedly picked Lars up on the side of the road barefoot and disheveled, I mean, this guy could be hitchhiking across Europe. I mean, he could be anywhere by now. I mean, who knows?
I hope one day they're able to find Lars, for better or worse, just closure for his family.
The more I think about this story, the less I think it's drugs. I think Lars just somehow got hit on the head, whether it was from an actual attack or he just bumped his head on something. And when that happened, a switch turned off in his brain to drop everything you have at the airport, run for your life, run over these fences, like book it out of there, and just kind of like never to be heard from again. No collect calls to his mother, no nothing. Like, I think something just happened in his brain and it went haywire. It's sad to say, but it's been so many years now, so I don't believe that he's alive. Unfortunately, people that are mentally disabled and they're out there on their own, they oftentimes get taken advantage of, and who knows where he is today. But honestly, I fear the worst for him. Hopefully someday his family can get some closure to this and, maybe identify a body or something. Shout out to Mr. Bond. I've been watching his content for years, and he's just a fantastic storyteller, and I just get lost in the stories that he tells. If you're new around here, please consider liking and subscribing. This is a brand new YouTube channel where I'm going to be doing more videos just like this one. So if that's your jam and you'd like to hang out for a little bit, consider hitting those 2 buttons down below.